Some ecotourism offers visitors close encounters with different species. But new research suggests that these activities may not be so great for the animals. Researchers tagged stingrays in Stingray City in the Cayman Islands to monitor their movements and behavior. Compared to stingrays outside of the tourism area, those in Stingray City switched their activity patterns from night to day, when tourists handed out food, and mated year-round instead of seasonally. The stingrays also had or bite marks, which suggests increased aggression towards one another. The study is in the journal PLOS One. Past research has found increased stress and more intra- and inter-aggression among animals that have been fed by humans. Interactive tourism is a growing business. But researchers say that more study is needed to ensure the health and safety of humans and animals alike. Ecotourism may be good for a given species, as humans become engaged in its survival. But for the individual members of that species tasked with dealing with people, it may not be a walk in the park. Now, millions of roses get handed out on Valentine's Day. But growing roses has an environmental impact worse than many other crops. Start with climate change. Most roses in the US and Europe are imported from warmer climes. All that flying and trucking adds thousands of metric tons of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Then there's all the water needed to, well, water the flowers. And the runoff fouled by copious quantities of pesticides needed to make the roses look perfect. There's also the wildlife and workers poisoned by all that fumigation. Add to that habitat destruction where floral plantations displace native forest and wetlands. Finally, there's the refrigeration needed to keep those blooms fresh. The electricity is often produced by burning fossil fuels, and the refrigerant gases also exacerbate climate change. A more sustainable and, possibly, more romantic approach is to go with flowers certified by outfits like Veriflora, or even better, whatever flowers are in season locally. Of course, that's not much help for those of us in wintry climes. Maybe try writing a poem. Let's see, roses are red, violets are blue. Let's say you've saved up 200 grand for a trip to space with Virgin Galactic. Lucky you. But are you healthy enough to fly? You'll have to talk your doctor. A new study in the BMJ outlines the role that general practitioners will have to play in commercial spaceflight. After all, astronauts typically have to be in tip-top shape. But opening the door to the paying public means that healthy individuals will soon have access to space, too. And the stress spaceflight, combined with the negative effects of weightlessness on muscle and bone, could cause real problems. It may be up to your personal physician to make the go/no-go call based on your medical history. Among the potential hypotheticals floated in the BMJ study, can my patient with stable angina at pacemaker for complete heart block participate in a suborbital Virgin Galactic flight? What is the maximum allowable time that my patient with osteoporosis can spend on planned vacation at a space hotel? There are no official answer, yet. The study's authors note that such questions may be in the air, or lack thereof, in the not-too-distant future. Ladybugs love to snack aphids and other pets. So people began importing an Asian species, called the harlequin ladybird, as natural pest control. But in their new environments, the harlequins wiped out native ladybugs. And they have their parasites to thank. That's according to research in the journal Science. A parasite called Microsporidia lies dormant in the circulatory systems of harlequin ladybirds. But when scientists injected Microsporidia, or a control substance, most survived. Harlequin ladybirds' immune system, on the other hand, have learned to deal with Microsporidia, which lets the insects use them as biological weapons. Because one way ladybugs compete is by consuming the eggs and larvae of rival species. When European ladybug species eat the harlequin ladybird eggs and larvae, they also consume the microsporidia and die. Their discovery demonstrates an important role of immunity in evolutionary selection. And it shows that there are many ways to lose a food fight. It's a given that most babies wear diapers, in Western cultures anyway. But diapers may trap more than waste, they may also confine a baby's ability to walk. Scientists compared the walking gaits of 60 babies who were either naked, wore a thin disposable diaper, or a thick cloth diaper. Half the babies were 13-month-old novice walkers and the other 19-month-old experienced walkers. When the 13-month-olds walked naked, only 10 fell, but while wearing the cloth diaper 21 of them fell, and while wearing the disposable 17 of them fell. Among the 19-month-olds only 4 fell while naked or wearing disposable, while 8 fell when wearing cloth diapers, but both age groups took wider and shorter steps while wearing diapers as opposed to walking naked. The research is in the journal Developmental Science. The study cannot predict if wearing diapers has a long-term impact. Nonetheless, the researchers believe walking naked would speed up walking development, but then we are left with the issue of covering the entire house in plastic and relying heavily on the child's ability to communicate his or her elimination intentions. Unless you're at a Chaucer convention, speaking Middle English is not going to impress a potential romantic partner in 2013. Similarly, male savanna sparrows have to make sure their vocalization are up to date. Researchers analyzed 3 decades of recordings of male savanna sparrows. And birds that changed their tune over the year did better with the ladies. The research is in the journal Animal Behavior. While introductory notes of the sparrow's song stayed the same, the middle and end parts changed over time. In the 1980s, songs concluded with longer, high-pitched trills. More recent songs contain a series of clicks in the middle and a shorter, low-pitched trill at the end. Researchers found that the male sparrows that adopted the newer songs had higher rates of sexual reproduction. Because you don't want to be seen as behind the times. Indeed, Chaucer might have had his pick of ladies in the 14th century. But few today can make heads or tails of his tales. In planet formation, as in adolescence, you've got your late bloomers. Such is the case for a nearby star called TW Hydri. At some 3 million to 10 million years of age, it's relatively old for a young star. That is, TW Hydri formed much more recently than our Sun but is past the point at which most fledgling stars are still encircled by a massive disk of dust and gas, the stuff of planet formation. But a new analysis shows that TW Hydri retains a surprisingly hefty circumstellar disk, implying that the star could still be forming giant planets. The study appears in the journal Nature. Researchers from the U.S., Germany, and the Netherlands pointed the European Space Agency's orbiting Herschel Space Observatory at TW Hydri to investigate the star's disk. They detected a heavy hydrogen molecule, called hydrogen deuteride. From that measurement, they were able to estimate the abundance of ordinary, which makes up the bulk of the disk. The result, TW Hydri still has enough raw material left to make 60 Jupiters or so, despite its maturity. For aging stars, then perhaps 10 million is the new 30. Roosters greet the rising sun with crowing sound. But they also crow at other time. So are they responding to the light? Or do they simply know that it's morning? New research says the latter. Roosters crow because of internal time cues. The finding is in the journal Current Biology. Scientists controlled the light levels in roosters' habitats. For 2 weeks, the birds experienced 12 hours of light followed by 12 hours of dim light. Consistent with the pre-dawn noises observed in wildfowl, the roosters lived in constant dim light. Yet they continued to crow about once a day at intervals of 23.7 hours to be precise. Even without morning light, their circadian rhythms told them when dawn should be breaking. The birds also crowed in response to sudden light and to the sounds of other roosters. But they were more likely to react when those stimuli occurred near dawn, showing that you can't really keep a rooster in the dark about the time. Advertising and media companies often get lobbied to use models that represent the average woman's body rather than ultra-thin models, whose images may influence some women to have an unhealthy relationship with food. Now a study supports the idea that observed image affect what people consider to be acceptable body types. The report is in the journal PLOS ONE. Researchers surveyed subjects about their opinions of their bodies and those of others. Then they presented the subjects with photos of large or thin women. Some photos were of beauty queens in evening gowns or other high-status clothing. Other photos were of women who were either very large or very thin, wearing just a neutral gray. Following those viewings, the subjects were again surveyed about their body preferences. Subjects who originally preferred thin bodies only increased their preference for thinness after being shown photos of thin women. But they decreased their preference for thin bodies after being shown photos of larger women. And the attire of the women in the photos made no difference to the subject's latter preference. The researchers say that this study provides strong evidence that images of female bodies promoted by the media and ad agencies could have indeed a real impact on women's preference and subsequent thoughts about body type.